Hi, I'm Hermes and welcome to the Sage's Thoughts. So this episode is the fourth part in my Hermetic Law series. So if you haven't seen the first 3 laws, I'd invite you to go check those out first. But today we're going to be discussing the fourth law, the law of polarity. So the quote that's given for this law in the Kabbalion is, "Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled." So what does that mean? Hot and cold, for example, they are opposites, but as it said, they exist on the same degree or the same spectrum. So you go too far one way, you get heat, too far the other way, you get cool. But they are one and the same, and they exist on the same spectrum. The same can be said with all the things you see that are opposites in this world. This philosophy is very similar to Taoism, and as you can see in our podcast, I often refer to Taoism and the law of polarity as one of my favorite laws, which is why I'm excited to talk about it today. So with Taoism, the symbol of Taoism right here is the yin and yang symbol, which is all about duality, the yin, the yang becoming one. In China, they call that the Tai Chi symbol, which I'm going to go into in a little bit. So another example that can be given is the balance of time. So you have past, you have present, and you have the future. So obviously the degree would be too far back is the past, too far forward is the future. And a Taoist quote by Lao Tzu is, "If you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are living in the future. If you are at peace, you are living in the present." So it's all about attempting to find that balance in all things. That is one of the best uses of the law of polarity for myself. And going back to hot and cold, looking at the planet in which we live on, everything exists with a delicate balance. You know, if we were slightly further from the sun, it would be a lot colder. The water wouldn't be able to exist. It would be frozen. And without water, as you know, there would be no life on this planet. And the same goes the opposite way. If we were slightly closer to the sun, things would be a lot hotter. Water would become steam. It would also be non-existent. And also there would be no life on the planet. That's a great example of this law of balance, this law of polarity, and the idea of that existing on the planet, everything existing with a delicate balance. And Taoism is all about, the Tao means the way. So Taoism is all about the practice of the way, kind of aligning yourself with that natural balance that exists within the earth, within the planet, within ourselves. It's kind of tapping into that delicate balance. And I think the law of polarity is one of the best ways in which you can do that. Going back again to past and present, and the quote I gave by Lao Tzu, you know, when you live in the past, you are depressed. When you live in the future, you are anxious. You're anxious of the future. You're held back by the, things of the past in which you're no longer happy with, or that you're dwelling on, or the trauma. But when you just exist in the present, you're focused on what you're doing. If you're just sitting here talking, drinking tea, when you're just present with everything around you, you find your mind is a lot more at peace. It's a lot more, in balance. So how can this law be used in your own life? I often like to use it and play devil's advocate with myself in my own mind sometimes, or in debate, or you'll see in our podcast, The Sage's Way, I often relate to this law because I like to try and see both sides of an argument, try to understand both opposites, because it's very easy to be unbalanced. It's very easy to go one way, but trying to find that balance is a lot more difficult, I find, because essentially you have to challenge yourself. You have to challenge your own core beliefs in order to find balance, to find peace with other people, to try and see someone else's point of view. For example, if you want to talk about ideology, you could talk about politics. Some people are very far on the right, some people are very far on the left. The left is progressivism, the right is traditionalism. So some people are very stuck to tradition, and they want, which has a lot of value. There's a quote, "We are standing on the shoulders of giants." We wouldn't have been able to come as far as we have without the amazing traditions of the past. Same with progressivism. We wouldn't have been able to strive so far forward and, tap into our creative potential and innovation without this side of things. And too much of one side, you're stagnant and you're not moving forward. And same on the other side. If you go too far on the progressivism side and you have a complete rejection of all tradition and, arrogance to think that you have all the answers and you can, completely pave a whole new path forward without any of the wisdom of the past. That's also an amazing mistake that many cultures have made in the past with detrimental effect. So it's a balance of those two things. In this one example of ideology, it's the balance of, respecting tradition and tradition that still holds value to this day, letting go of tradition that no longer has value to this day, and allowing the ability to be creative, to be innovative, to strive forward. So it's about finding that balance. Another way, if you're looking to use this as a practice, as I mentioned with Taoism, the symbol yin and yang, that the name of the yin and yang symbol in China is Tai Chi, and there's a practice, as you know, which is called Tai Chi. Tai Chi for me is the practice of that law of polarity. It is like poetry in motion. Tai Chi essentially is all about balance. It's, if similar with the law of polarity, if you're trying to balance on one leg, if you go too far left, you'll fall to the side on that side. If you go too far right, you'll fall to your right. You have to find that exact balancing point with all of your movements to really master the art of Tai Chi. And I remember when I first started, I found it, very difficult, because it's also, you could see the yin and yang as the balance between the mind and the body, because often those two things go astray. As I said, you can be dwelling on the past, dwelling on the future. For those that don't know, I went to China to live in Wudang Mountain, which is the birthplace of Tai Chi. I lived there for a year and I studied Kung Fu and Tai Chi about 7 hours a day for a whole year. So I really, tapped into the meaning of Tai Chi, the deeper meaning of it, and Tai Chi as a practice. And I remember when I first started, when I had gone out there, I was very anxious. I had loads of things that were constantly on my mind. I existed in my mind. And when you're doing Tai Chi, you have to be completely present with the movements. You have to enter what is called a non-dual state. It's the yin and yang, the two things becoming one, the mind, body becoming one. It's almost like a flow state, where you're just completely engulfed in what you're doing. And when I was first starting, I found that very difficult. My mind would constantly stray off to the future, to the past, my worries. And my first 3 months, pretty much, I was doing Tai Chi, and only Tai Chi, and it was almost like torture in the beginning. And by the end, I just found this level of peace that I've never experienced before in my life. And that was essentially just presence. It gave me presence, it gave me balance within myself. And as I said, it's often also compared to water. I gave the example of water before, water existing within the delicate balance. Water is almost the perfect personification of balance. And with Tai Chi, you're constantly changing directions, you're constantly being adaptable, flexible, and similar to water. Water is constantly changing directions, constantly changing form. A practitioner of Tai Chi was Bruce Lee, and he had the famous quote about water. He said, "Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless like water. If you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. If you put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. If you put water into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now, water can flow and it can crash. Be water, my friend." So it's all about tapping into that flexibility of mind, flexibility of body, the ability to change form, to change past, not to be completely rigid. If you look at the sea, rock seems very strong, very rigid, and the water seems very soft, but the constant ability of it to change its direction, to crash onto the rock, eventually it breaks down the rock to sand. The water defeats the rigidness of the rock. Yeah, I would definitely recommend to anyone that hasn't, done Tai Chi before. It's a really good way of kind of tapping into and finding balance with your mind, with your body, helping to overcome certain thoughts. If you are dwelling on the past or the future, it's another quote I've heard before. I'm not sure who it's by, but it's, "I am not my past, my name is not I was. I am not my future, my name is not I'll be. I am my present, my name is I am." Often when I teach Tai Chi, I'll finish with a quote of this nature. And yeah, living in Wudangshan, China was a massive transformational journey for me. By the end of it, I was honored with becoming a disciple in the Wudang sect of Kung Fu. So I'm a 16th generation Kung Fu and Tai Chi disciple. In order to do that, I had to partake in a ceremony, which was a Taoist ceremony where I was given a Taoist name. I was made a sword, and my Taoist name was inscribed in the sword. And I essentially had to give vows that I would live my life in a good way and almost, be a Taoist, be a protector of the delicate balance, be a warrior of balance. That's essentially what that means. I've got my sword here. This is the sword I was given. Give you a little look. And I keep it as a symbol, as a remembrance of that journey in which I went through. That journey of kind of the lost boy that had Peter Pan syndrome, that never wanted to adopt any responsibility, that was engulfed in my mind, stuck in the past, worried about the future, and just finding this level of peace through this practice. So I keep that as a symbol, as a remembrance of that I'm constantly striving forward, that I'm constantly working on myself, I'm cultivating my mind, I'm cultivating my body, I'm cultivating those dual opposites. By saying find the delicate balance, I'm not saying to not engulf yourself in the opposite. Sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes you need to go through the heat, go in a sauna or have an ice bath, or engulf yourself in, traditional values from time to time, engulf yourself in progressive values. Try to understand both sides of the opposite. Strengthen both sides of the opposite and your wisdom of the two sides to find that perfect balance, because you're not going to find it with kind of ignorance of either side. It's a practice at the end of the day. You have to feel both sides, you have to understand both sides in order to find that law of polarity at the end of the day. Anyway, that's kind of my rambles on that. And to finish this video, I'm going to show you a video of me almost a year ago doing a Tai Chi performance. It was for the Indigo project, which is coming up in a few months. I may do another performance, who knows. I'll put their website in the description for anyone that's curious and looking more into that. But yeah, enjoy my Tai Chi video. Welcome to the Sageverse. Please just observe the birth of this creative surge for the purpose to leave hatred purged and replaced with words that will make you learn to take your place on earth. And once you've taken your place and found your greatest of traits, cultivated the day, this will be making you say, this is the sage's way.